Hello friends, it's really good to have you with me again today. Today we are moving on to another painting in the Daily Art app. You'll remember last time we looked at Still Life, Candy and Clay by Josefa Diobidos, which was very interesting and it made me very, very hungry. But today we are moving on to The Embrace by Egon Shiel. And this particular artist is very, very famous, and it's one I studied when I was studying art in school, in GCSE and A-level art. And I remember this one is one of my favourites of his. It's just so intimate, and it's almost like these two people are one person. It's really quite captivating, but we'll do that in a second. So this is The Embrace by Egon Shiel. This was from March the 5th. So let's turn off our aeroplane mode and we will take a screen grab of this painting. But first, like always, we will have to wait for it to load. Loading, 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 loading. L-O-A-D-I-N-G. That's how you spell loading. Right. So let's open this up in our Goodnotes. This was the one that we did before. Let's open up a new image and import it. So like always, we are going to be doing our own critique of this picture before we kind of delve into the inner meanings and messages and history behind it. So here we see two people. One is a woman and one is a man. They are naked and they appear to be in a very passionate embrace. The woman has her head turned to one side, whilst the man seems to be kissing her neck. They are so heavily intertwined that it looks like they are one person. The colour palette for this is very interesting because you have this very plain beige background with nothing in it, and this kind of colour palette translates through onto the skin of our two people. But you see hues of shading in blue here, various different places to give it depth. The man has quite a skinny physique. You can kind of see his bones here and his bony bottom, what appears like. On his legs you have these hairs, what looks like hairs on here, and on his arms and forearms. You can kind of barely see anything of the woman, just her shoulder hair and her hip hair and her hands, which are kind of drawn into her. Her hair is red or chestnut brown. You can actually see the marks of the artist here, Maybe this was a palette knife, maybe it was just brush strokes. And the man's hair is really dark brown or black. You can see these hues of blue to indicate depth. Right away, from an emotional point of view, this is a very emotive picture, and it draws forth feelings of passion, love, intimacy, sharing a special connection with someone. I hope that it's that way. But it gives me nice feelings. It reminds me of me and my other half. Of like that passionate embrace, and we kind of have the same hair colour actually. So, what can we learn about this picture? So, The Embrace by Egon Shiel, painted in 1917. And it says, "You must know that my love for Egon Shiel is endless. Look at this couple sitting in a tender and passionate embrace. Who else depicted the intimacy and closeness of the lovers in such a discreet and voyeuristic way at the same time? This work is the decisive preliminary study for an oil painting with the same title." Shiel declared in his gouache his choice of the novel and unexpected way in which he would present the embracing couple in his painting. They will be seen from a most unusual point of view, with the man intervening back to the viewer. With the man's intervening back to the viewer, yes. So we don't really see anything. Here, the artist depicted himself. He has shown himself nude in a major canvas for the first time since 1911. One of the causes for the cessation of nude self-portraiture was the deep trauma inflicted at the Nuremberg in 1912 when the artist was jailed on morals charges. The model for the female figure, on the other hand, is not Shiel's wife, Edith. She had a different figure. Ooh, scandalous. When Shiel painted the gouache Umarmung, When Shiel painted the gouache Umarmung and subsequently completed the oil painting, he had only about a year left to him before his death due to the Spanish flu in October 1918. Drafted in 1915 into the Austrian army, he was assigned to supply units, which kept him away from the front lines and enabled him to find time to paint. In the fall of 1917, he was transferred, as he had hoped, to the Imperial War Museum in Vienna. With even more time available for studio work, he undertook this late series of figure paintings. His large contribution to the Vienna Secession in 1918, which practically amounted to a retrospective, provided to be the great triumph of his career. Klimt had died earlier that year, and now Shiel was widely considered to be his successor at Vienna's leading progressive artist. Shiel was only 28 years old. P.S. Here, you can read more about Shiel's art on the verge of eroticism and pathology. And this was a black crayon and gouache on paper. I hope I'm saying that right. So, there's a lot about the picture and the artist too. So let's make some notes. let's make some notes away from the painting, actually, picture. So this was, let's get the bigger pen. The embrace. By Egon. Shiel. Jack Spanning. SCHIELE. SCHIELE. And it was painted in 1917. And it was black crayon and gouache on paper. So black crayon and gouache on paper. Let's make you a little bit more. Okay. So this was an unusual point of view, the man's back to the viewer. So this was an unusual position with man's back to the viewer. And it depicts him. So this is Egon Shiel, but this is not Egon's wife. Interesting. I wonder what she thought of that. Okay. So, he was jailed in 1912 on morals charges. So he was jailed in 1912 on morals charges, which made him pause in his self-portrait work, which understandably you would, wouldn't you? Okay. So he died due to the Spanish flu in October 1918. So Shiel died October 1918 due to Spanish flu. So shame. So drafted in in 1915 he was drafted into the Austrian army. So in 1915, drafted into Austrian army. But then what happened? He went to, in 1917 he was transferred to the Imperial War Museum in Vienna. So 1917, transferred to Imperial War Museum, Vienna. Transferred. And then he contributed to the Vienna session in 1918, which practically amounted to a retrospective. So 1918, let's go over here. 1918, he contributed to the Vienna session. I think I've spelled it wrong. Secession. Which proved to be a triumph of his career, which was the triumph of his career. I can't spell, it's so terrible. Career, Dewey's. And he was 28 when he died. Okay, so let's recap on what we've learnt about this painting. So this is called The Embrace, and it's by Egon Shiel, and it was painted in 1917 using black crayon and gouache on paper. It shows two people in a passionate embrace, but it shows an unusual position of the subject with their back to the viewer. It was modelled on Shiel himself, but this was not Egon's wife or Shiel's wife, because of the figure. It was known that his wife had a different figure. So a little bit about the artist himself. He typically did nude self-portraits, but in 1912 he was actually jailed for morals charges, which made him pause and become reluctant to do self-portrait or nude self-portraits. In 1915 he was actually drafted into the Austrian army, but luckily in 1917 he was transferred to the Imperial War Museum, where he contributed to the Vienna succession, which was actually the triumph of his career. And Klimt had died a little bit before Shiel, so Shiel took up the torch or the flame of his, he was the next new thing. But unfortunately, In 1917, he died due to Spanish flu, and he was only 28 when he died. So that's very, very sad. Because if he had lived a little bit longer, who knows what he could have created. So, I really like this painting, picture, drawing. It has a lot of emotional depth to it. I mean, even though it's like really, really, really simple, it just captures a moment that I think really translates across to the viewer. You can really feel this painting, picture, drawing. You can really feel it sort of coming through, and I loved how stripped back it is, and that just truly depicts what like this moment is for these two people. No bells, no whistles, no distractions. It's just a man and a woman just loving each other. So I hope you have enjoyed this critique of The Embrace by Egon Shiel. I hope you found it to be relaxing as well as informative, and I really look forward to seeing you again in my next video. Alright, thank you so much for listening, guys, and I will see you soon. Take care.